In this tutorial, we're going to look at how to import data into SPSS from a MySQL database. Okay, well you can see here that we have an empty data view grid. So if you go File, Import Data, Database, New Query, you'll get the database wizard. You can see here you've got a list of data sources. Put simply, these are the databases from which you want to import data. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to add a data source, how to connect to it, and how to import data from it. Okay, if you click the Add ODBC Data Source button, you'll bring up a dialog box from within which you can add a new ODBC data source. So click Add. What you're seeing here are drivers for different databases. Now basically we're talking about the programs that allow Windows to communicate with different kinds of databases. So we've got MySQL, which is what we want for this tutorial, and we've got 3 SQL Server drivers. Now SQL Server is a Microsoft database. It's quite likely you're not going to see MySQL here. If you don't, you need to download the driver from the MySQL website. I'll leave the link in the description box, but basically you need to download it from here. The important thing is to choose the version of the driver that corresponds to your SPSS. So if you've got a 32-bit SPSS, then you need a 32-bit driver. Right, okay, well I'm going to assume you've installed it on your computer and that you can now see the driver in this list. If you can't, you might need to click out of the 2 ODBC dialog boxes and open them up again. The other thing you need to sort out before proceeding is the connection settings for your database. I'm assuming you've got a database, because otherwise why are you watching this video? But you do need to know the IP address, the username, and the password that you use to connect to it. Okay, so double click on the Unicode driver here to bring up the connection settings dialog box. Type in a memorable name for the data source. I'm calling mine SPSS tutorial database. Type in your IP address. For me it's just localhost because I've got the database on this computer. For you it'll be your IP address or your domain name. Okay, now you've got to fill in your connection details. So username, password, and here you should be able to select the database. Yep, there we are. Hit test, connection successful. Press OK, and you can see the data source has been added here. So press OK here, and there it is. It's popped up here as if by magic. Okay, so if you double click on the data source we've just configured, you'll get up a select data window. Now on your left here you can see the tables that are available in your database. I've got 2 tables. This table contains the details of my hypothetical experiment, and this table here contains the details of the subjects who are taking part in the experiment. 2 tables are actually linked to each other via these 2 fields. Okay, well to select data we've got to get the fields from this side over into that side. Obviously we're only going to put the fields in here that we want to actually appear in SPSS. So let's start with first name, double click, surname, gender, education, dog owner, and frisbee throwing distance. Now these are in a good order, but in fact you could alter the order by using the up and down buttons here. We don't need to do that, so let's just press next, and that brings up a slightly scary window that tells us we need to specify relationships. I'm not going to attempt a detailed explanation of what's going on here, but what you do need to know is that if you've got a join type inner, you're only going to import data where the subject ID here equals the person ID here. Suppose for example you've got 1,000 people in this table, and of those people you have 10 in here, and you know which 10 they are because the subject ID here matches the person ID here. In that situation, you're only going to import these 10 people in because of this inner join. And of course that's what you want, because you don't want the people in here who haven't taken part in this study to appear in your data. There's a lot more I could say about relational databases and the various kinds of joins, but I'm going to assume that if you're using a relational database that you pretty much know what you're doing. SPSS has an auto joins option, so hopefully the program will sort out the correct relationship between your tables. Okay, so you might be thinking, what do I do if the auto join tables doesn't work? How do I set up the relationship between the two tables? Well, it's easy. So let's unclick auto join tables, and you can see we lose the relationship. So to create the relationship, you just click on here and then drag it to the field that you want to link, like that. That's all there is to it. Those two tables are now linked. Okay, so click on the next button and it brings up a limited retrieved cases window. This allows you to limit the data you import into SPSS by specifying some selection criteria. Suppose, for example, you only wanted to import cases where the subject ID is greater than 2. You can do this by building an expression over here. I'll show you how. First part of the expression is your subject ID. So you drag the subject ID to the expression 1 box. Now the relation is greater than. You're offered various choices here, and that is the greater than option then. And the second expression, well, it's just 2, so you can just type in 2, like that. That sets up your expression. Now SPSS will only import those cases where the subject ID is greater than 2, as specified in here. If you have a large number of cases in your dataset, then you may want to randomly sample your cases. You might not want to import all your data. You can do this using this option here. Over on this side, it allows you to either specify a percentage of cases you want to import or the exact number of cases by clicking here and entering the number of cases in here. Right, well, we're not going to randomly sample our cases because we've only got 10, or in fact 8 if you take that into account. So we'll unselect this and then press next. This takes you onto a screen that allows you to define your variables. So we've got 3 string types and 3 numeric types. Now we'll keep the first 2 as string types because they're only there for the purposes of illustration really. However, we will change the education variable into a numeric form. As I have noted in other tutorials, best practice is to use numeric data wherever you can. Okay, we're now ready to import the data into SPSS, so just hit the finish button. And there we go. As you can see, we've got our 8 cases, we've got our gender, dog owner, frisbee thrown, distance and education variables. Now the education variable is coded in numeric form as you can see, but SPSS has very cleverly added value labels. So if you hit that toggle button, you can see the value labels are equivalent to our original string values. If you hit the variable view, you can confirm that here. Click there, and you can see it's added in 3 value labels. Okay, I guess the other thing worth noting is that SPSS has added 2 labels, dog owner and frisbee throwing distance. These were taken from the names of the field in our original database. The reason that the label has been added is because the name of the variable has been concatenated here in order to get rid of the spaces. So you've got dog underscore owner and frisbee underscore. If you check the data, everything else looks right. Levels of measurement are all correct and our types here are all correct. So that's it. We have imported data from MySQL into SPSS and we're ready to run statistical procedures on the data. Okay, that's it for this tutorial. I hope you found it useful and you've now got a good idea of how you'd import data from a MySQL database into SPSS. Please like and share the video and check out easyspss.com for further SPSS tutorials.